Okay, my grandma and Grandpa Gaertner was in Dresden, Germany, and Grandpa Gaertner had two half-brothers here in America, Joseph, and they kept after him, to come. And so in Germany, they had lottos, and so these women, they all got together and put their money all in together, and they says, Lena, you go. You're the one that's a lucky one. You're the lucky one. So Grandma went to this lottery, and she won. And, she was so tickled because she said if she won, that was their trip to America. And so she come home, and she was all thrilled. She gave the people their money, and then she told Grandpa, she says, we're going to America. He says, oh, no, we're not. And she says, yes, we are. And she says, okay, you stubborn old fool. You'll just stay here and you'll die in the coal mines like your brothers did. They had three brothers, and they all died in the coal mine but Grandpa Gaertner. Grandpa Gaertner was the only Gaertner. The two that was up here in Joseph are in Rudger. And so anyway, Grandma just kept planning on going, and there was, the 5 kids. Grandpa, your grandpa, Emil, was just a baby. And so she kept on planning, and he saw Grandma was pretty determined, and so I guess and then the 2 brothers here in Joseph got money together and was able to get a couple of the sisters and nieces. So there was 11 people that come over on the bottom of that big boat. They didn't have enough money that they could go up on top. They had to go down below. And they landed in New York, and they got a train some way, and they got here to Grande. And the 2 brothers was here to meet them with a horse and buggy. That's how they got to Joseph. That was a pretty long trip. And so they had a little shack all for Grandma and Grandpa, the 5 kids. And so anyway, Grandpa farmed, and every year they lost their crop. Every year. And in 1940, now this was in 1900. 1914, Grandpa had it. He says, I'm going to Grande. And he bought him a little place out here on N Avenue and moved the family there. And so Grandpa bought a cow. And, of course, they couldn't drink all that milk, so he got some bottles, and Aunt Ella took a little red wagon, and she put that milk in this little red wagon and went down Adams Avenue and started knocking on people's doors if they'd like to have some nice milk. And she got a route going, and she had to they had to get a bigger thing for her because she was outgrowing her little red wagon. And that's how the Greenwood Dairy got started. It's your grandma and grandpa. And of course, when they seen the people were just going crazy for their milk, and they had the whole milk. They didn't have any such thing as pasteurized milk then. So that's how the Greenwood Dairy. I have no idea in the world where Greenwood Dairy come. It was Grandpa. But there's a school here in Grande that's Greenwood School, and there's several other things that's Greenwood. But anyway, they they all come down here, and of course, and the kids all worked. They had this little old farm, and they all worked. Every one of them worked. And so, anyway, that's how they got started in USA. And so, let's see, I forget what year it was that Grandpa Gaertner got up one morning and he was deafer than a doornail. Couldn't hear nothing. And of course they had no money whatsoever to buy a hearing aid. In fact, I don't think they even had very much of anything like that. And so the kids all had to take over. And they lived there on that place. And Mom and Dad, well, let's see, Mom was 16 and Dad was 19 when they got married. And they fixed a little house up for Mom and Dad right across the driveway there where we lived for a long time. A kitchen, a front room, and one bedroom for all of us. And, of course, Mom and Dad, they had me first, and then they had Mary, and then Wayne, and then they had William later. And but Mom wasn't a bit well. She had a goiter, and they almost lost her. And I guess this doctor out at Hot Lake, Daddy called him or went and seen him or something and asked him if he'd come and see what was the matter with his wife. He says she is so sick she can't even take care of the kids or anything. And so he come in, Mom was in the bed, and he just look at her and he says, "Oh my God, she's dying with a goiter." And he says, "We got to operate as fast as we can to save her." So Mama's cut from here to there. Mom always wore some beads to cover that scar up. You never seen my mom without beads. She had that scar. Well, they done real good, and in 1930, I guess it was, William was born. And in 1932, they moved out on the farm, bought the big farm out on Island City Highway in 1932. And then Grandpa really, and Daddy really went big in the dairy business. And they stayed with that for quite a while until the Oregon Milk Control Board and everything come in and said you have to pasteurize your milk. You cannot sell whole milk again. And so Daddy and Grandpa was just furious. In fact, they sold, a lot of people come to the farm and would get it, so they'd have their whole milk. But they kept them from delivering to the store or anything. So that went on, and so let's see, it's in 1939, I guess it was, is when Art and I got married, and Art went in the farming with Daddy. And Wayne was pretty good size. He was helping too. And so, anyway, Grandpa got this prostate trouble. And, they didn't know too much about that then. And this doctor operated on Grandpa, and it was a disaster. He just didn't make it. He kind of just lost his mind over it because it wasn't a very successful operation then. And in 1939, Grandpa died. And so, of course, Daddy took over the farm, and little old Grandma would sit in there and count the money when Daddy would bring it home. It it was really funny. So anyway, let's see, and Daddy and Art was farming, and then we bought that farm out on the Island City Highway toward Cove, and everything was going fine until Daddy started having heart attacks. And when Art never knew whether he was going to have help when he come in to milk cows or not, because Daddy was real bad. So anyway, Art, let's see, Wayne was let's see, how was that? Wayne was in school, yeah, and I don't know, for some reason he decided he didn't want to milk cows. He was going to do something else. In the meantime, him and Betty had gotten married. And so Wayne worked at the mill for a while, and then he decided he went over to Hermiston and worked on a pheasant farm, raising pheasants. Well, that didn't last too long either. He got homesick. Anyway, he come back and was helping over on the farm.